Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson. This past week, Max Armstrong had the chance to get out on the road a little bit and talk to farmers across the eastern Corn Belt. While he was there, he had the chance to check in with Cullen Ryan, a business rep with BASF, and he asked Cullen how crops were faring this year.
It's been a little bit tougher going this year. Last year, a lot of folks raised maybe the best crop they've ever had. We were pretty dry in June last year, like we were this year, but we caught rains in July last year, and that's where things will look a little bit different. You look at the drought map, and the whole part of southern Ohio is in the red. So with that, we still have tar spot and water hemp are starting to be the two main pests that we're dealing with, which is going to be something we're going to, in the future, we're going to have to deal with from here on out.
Do you have growers taking a look at what will perform well in a dry season, what will serve them well, a little more so simply because of these dry conditions here?
Yeah, we do. We've talked about the plant health benefits associated with our performance-driven fungicides for a long time now, but that's something that we've had to take a really deep look at this year. Coming into harvest here pretty soon, that's on the top of everybody's mind right now.
Thanks, Max. That was Cullen Ryan from BASF. The aviation industry stands at a pivotal point as it looks to tackle its carbon emission challenges. Joining us today to discuss it is Jonathan Martin. He serves as the Director of Economics and Market Analytics at the Clean Fuels Alliance America. Jonathan, thanks for taking the time to talk with us this week.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
As I hear the stories about SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, it sounds like demand is really strong, Jonathan, but we're not able to quite keep up with it in terms of production. Can you fill us in on that discrepancy?
Yeah, sure. In 2022, the U.S. consumed about 24 billion gallons of jet fuel, with global consumption somewhere around 99 billion gallons. So it's a very, very large market in jet fuel. Despite the strong demand, SAF production is still only around the millions of gallons level. So obviously there's a huge gap there. And so this gap is substantial, but the industry is very optimistic about scaling up production. The key challenge is the availability of feedstocks necessary to produce sustainable aviation fuel.
Well, so let's talk about that feedstocks issue a little bit, Jonathan. What is the industry doing to help alleviate some of that crunch?
So the industry has been diversifying its feedstock portfolio in order to meet that demand over the last couple of years. We're starting to incorporate various feedstocks other than soybean oil, such as canola oil, corn oil, tallow, and in other imported oils as well. And again, domestic soybean oil is obviously a big feedstock for us, and it's the largest feedstock for these clean fuels. Every month, about 1 billion pounds of domestic soybean oil is used for fuel production.
Wow. So we're seeing that demand tick up a little bit, but those concerns about imported oil, Jonathan, they're still with us. Hear the impact of that on American farmers. Can you talk us through a little bit about that balance?
Yeah, obviously that's a very hot topic as of right now, and I know that lots of people are concerned about it. But from our viewpoint, if you end up cutting imports, that could temporarily increase soybean oil prices. So that would be great for American farmers, right? However, when you look at the longer term, it would also signal to airlines that sustainable aviation fuel might not be a reliable option. If imports were cut, we couldn't meet the current demand levels that there are for clean fuels like biodiesel or renewable diesel, which would be detrimental to the airline's confidence in SAF going forward, because if you couldn't even meet the other demand sources. So this is a long game. American farmers are historically very forward-thinking. At Clean Fuels, we're also working to get the carbon intensity scores for soybean oil down so that it's more competitive with those other feedstocks that are kind of coming into the market and really outperforming what you would expect. A lower CI score is also going to make soybean oil much more attractive to the aviation industry, and airlines are eager for SAF. And with the right support and collaboration, we can scale up production and ensure a steady supply of sustainable aviation fuel and supported by farmers.
All right, so it sounds like we're moving in the right direction. Jonathan, would that be an adequate way to say it?
Yes.
That is fantastic. Jonathan Martin, the Director of Economics and Market Analytics at the Clean Fuels Alliance America. Thank you so much for talking with us this week and filling us in on sustainable aviation fuel.
Thank you very much.
You can learn more by visiting them at cleanfuels.org. Save instantly when you buy 2 or more eligible Firestone Ag tires during the Firestone Fall into Savings promotion, now until October 31st. Visit firestoneag.com or contact your local certified ag dealer. It was a busy week in the commodity markets, and joining me now to discuss it is Brian Doherty. He serves as Senior Market Advisor over at Total Farm Marketing. And Brian, thanks for talking with us this week.
Mike, thank you. My pleasure to be here.
The big news really started the week on Monday with the release of the supply and demand estimates from USDA. Brian, all the commodities got a little bit of information, but the soybean market really seemed to take the news hard. Can you fill us in on what the USDA changed for soybeans?
Sure. The soybean market got a lot of news. And what it did was it saw an increase in yield, increase in acres, and an increase in carryout. So it kind of had the triple whammy there. And the bottom line is the carryout number. That's the number that when you filter everything else out starts to matter. So with carryout on the rise and in the 500 million bushel area, the market felt very comfortable with that expected supply. On top of that, you really had a good weather forecast for the week as well. And Mike, that led to, I think, additional farmers selling. Big picture perspective, the concern is still that the export market isn't strong enough to meet this year's USDA current demand estimates, and consequently, you're looking at the potential that exports will not meet USDA projections, and we wouldn't be surprised to see those reduced next month and consequently increase in carryout again.
Brian, we've been talking for a long time about the growth of renewable diesel and soybean oil going into biofuels. Did USDA take any of that into account in this this series of estimates?
Yeah, I chuckle a little bit because a year ago, 18 months ago, that was sort of the real sort of bright spot, or looking like the bright spot. USDA did take some of that into account, Mike, but big picture perspective is when you got a carryout number that's on the rise, it doesn't really matter what kind of product values you have or usage you have, you still need to chip away at that carryout number. So from a big picture perspective, the market's got a real problem right now. It's got too much inventory in the U.S. projected, and you're looking at more increase in potential South American production in the year ahead. So the reset button is in motion from $12 and $13 and $14 soybeans to the reality of what could be $8 to $10 soybeans as our new paradigm for prices in the at least in the foreseeable future for the 24-25 campaign, maybe into 26.
Brian, that's a pretty grim outlook for soybean producers, given that we've got November 25 soybeans trading just shy of $10. Is that worth hedging at this point?
It's certainly worth taking a look at, Mike. As we look at big picture perspective, we just can't get away from that big supply. Now, here's the good news in soybeans. That number can change, and it can change rapidly. This year's crop isn't in the bin yet. So I don't want to get too far over our skis saying that it's doom and gloom in the bean complex. It's just a dose of reality that world supplies, U.S. supplies are adequate to more than adequate, and the market is factoring that in. The big picture, if we go back 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we'd carry out 900 million in the late 18, 19, 20 period, and the market gobbled all of that inventory up. So things do change, but presently you're on a track for what'll be a record crop, 53 bushels an acre. We'll get more information as the month wears on, but it's a big supply picture in a wet rag. The market factored that in. I'd like to think we're getting close to low, but I still don't have any signals, both technically or fundamentally, that we're there.
All right, lots to watch in these markets. That's the soybean report. When we come back, we'll take a look at what was moving in the corn and wheat markets with Brian Doherty of Total Farm Marketing. Save instantly when you buy 2 or more eligible Firestone Ag tires during the Firestone Fall into Savings promotion, now until October 31st. Visit firestoneag.com or contact your local certified ag dealer. We're talking markets with Brian Doherty, Senior Market Advisor with Total Farm Marketing. And Brian, we talked through the soybean market. Let's talk about wheat. We did see a shrink in the total production here for wheat. Is that a bullish factor long term?
You know, there's enough supply right now, Mike, that and negativity in the marketplace that it's not a bullish factor today, but it's a supportive factor in the long-term picture and the big picture perspective. We think the wheat market's trying to carve out a bottom here. We like the technical signals that we're beginning to see in the marketplace. I think when you look at wheat, we need to certainly focus on the U.S. and harvest in the spring wheat's underway, and there's some delays there. But when we look at the world market, Mike, and you look at world's projected inventory and carry out, 17-year low in projected carry out for the world if we exclude China. So what it tells us is that exporting countries remain light on inventory. That gives the market some room or opportunity to rally. It's just a matter of when. Right now, there's no urgency on end users' part to jump in there and buy. Maybe the first signal here that we're starting to see on a global sort of bigger picture perspective is the US dollar has lost ground over the last 30 days. And that should be a call to end users to get more aggressive.
All right. We'll see if they respond to that weaker dollar. Brian, let's turn the focus to the corn market. It looks like, according to the USDA, this is going to be another record yield coming this year, 183 bushels per acre. Do you believe it?
Well, I'll go with it for now, right? So, so we still to finish out this crop, but it certainly is in areas of the country just a really, really good-looking corn crop. Just anecdotally, I had a customer that was telling me he drove from south central Wisconsin down to southern Missouri, never saw a bad field. So you're talking some really nice areas there, Illinois, Indiana, southern two-thirds of Iowa. There's a swath. I want to be respectful of those who really struggled this spring all the way from the eastern South Dakotas, southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, into Wisconsin, into Michigan. But the rest of the crop is in really good shape. 10% of the crop is rated poor. So 1 out of 10 fields in theory isn't that good. Yet where it's good, it's really good. And now farmers are just kind of holding their breath to see if it actually can yield out as well as they think it looks at this point. So we'll stick with the USDA. We'll get some private tours here shortly. We'll get a better perspective. But it looks like it's another record crop on tap. And you've got a good weather forecast in the next couple of weeks that just no threat to the crop. So it should help to add weight to a lot of the corn, especially get one more rain and add some depth to the kernel and test weight.
Absolutely. Brian, are you advising growers to do anything on their new crop right in this range right here, or do you hold off and wait?
Well, that's a great question. So I'm advising them to work more with the paper products right now. I'm not terribly interested in selling cash at this point. If you're at a point where, though, you need to make delivery into the fall because of storage, I'd worry about basis widening out. So maybe lock a basis contract for fall delivery, or just go ahead and forward contract if you feel confident this is overrun bushels. I'd rather use the paper products and defend the carry in the market and buy puts and sell calls. I think that's a way to do that, to defend without commitment. The export sales, let's just focus on that for just a second here. Export sales, a little bit slower here as of late, but they're right on track to meet USDA projections. So that carryout number in corn is probably pretty static right now, around that 2 billion bushel at $4 a bushel. Corn's probably fairly priced. It doesn't mean it can't go lower with sympathy with others, but it's really stagnating out. If you look at where corn priced today versus where it was 2 or 3 weeks ago,
Absolutely.
Good sideways pattern.
Absolutely. Brian Doherty, Total Farm Marketing, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Yes, well, that seasonal dryness seems to be intensifying in the Pacific Northwest. Greg, is there any relief underway in the next week?
Some degree, probably the season's first more significant late season, summertime we speak of. Trough making its way slowly inland into the Pacific Northwest. So we may generate a couple of showers there, nothing to make any great improvement to conditions out there, but certainly needed. Meanwhile, winter wheat harvest continues on in the Pacific Northwest. On the opposite side of the ridge downstream, another one of these cool, dry Canadian air masses in between, the same setup that we saw around Bismarck and the flooding rainfall event. Probably seeing some of these showers and thunderstorms continue their propagation from northwest to southeast. So the bottom line, some areas will get additional rainfall and some drought easing. Meanwhile, spring grain harvest a bit delayed in the recurring wet weather and cool environs across parts of the northern plains and southern Canadian prairie, but that should not be long lasting. That trough does move inland, somewhat better opportunities for some scattered showers and thunderstorms, more lightning-based, dry-based thunderstorms as well. The fires generally under containment, but hopefully we improve the air quality. And again, downstream here, showers and thunderstorms making their way out of the Dakotas across parts of the Great Plains areas. Quite a contrast of temperatures setting up across the country. And here's at least the western flank of the hot dome over the southwestern reaches of the country, per usual, into the valleys of California. Here's the northern end of some of that cool air. A largely capped atmosphere. It has been just horrid for for man and beast across Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. Daytime readings 95 to 105, feeling like 115, and very little change despite a little boundary making its way across the area. Warmth returns across the parts of the northern plains. The heat from the southwest into Texas. It's tough again, and maybe a little monsoonal moisture making its way up across sections of the Four Corners. Had some flooding rainfall into parts of Utah as well over the past week. It's all or nothing in this monsoon setup.
Well, taking a look at the central part of the country, Greg, are we going to continue to see those shots of rain move across next week?
Exactly. So some of the drier reaches get additional recharge. Late planted varieties, beans will get some rainfall, but the specter of severe weather is still into play as well. So it's quiet, dry, very comfortable air for the time of year across much of the Corn Belt. Boy, about 65-70% of the corn and soybean fields rated in that good to excellent category. Of course, the exception continues to be parts of Ohio with ongoing dryness and drought here. We may catch, and we did catch, a couple of showers and thunderstorms over the past week, but here's this corridor from 95 to 105 degree heat over parts of the high plains to pretty delightful cool air relative to the time of year across the Corn Belt and in between these clusters of showers and thunderstorms. Tough on man and beast. Texas pasture lands basically blowtorched again, especially from about the Metroplex on westward. Remember, we had a wet spring and early summer into eastern Texas and Bayou country. So here this boundary really lying out across parts of the northern delta. Showers and thunderstorms there. The monsoon set up across Old Mexico. The tropics for now relatively quiet. We see a little lowering of pressures. Boy, if the atmosphere lines up accordingly, Mike, across the continental United States and off the African coast, it will get much busier compared to what we've seen so far.
All right, Greg, look at the eastern seaboard. They've had an active 2 weeks. Did they get a cool down this next week?
They do. Another trough once again. You get tropical systems that kind of come up over the western Atlantic. This is the western flank of Ernesto. We bring down cooler, drier Canadian air and more rain for the waterlogged areas of the northeast of New England. The Corn Belt in great shape back west towards the Missouri. Some scattered showers and thunderstorms. The heat beginning to work back northward. We get that same setup, this ring of fire, ridge-riding thunderstorms expected to build on in. Again, easy-going conditions on man and beast across much of the Corn Belt, and some short-term drying making its way across the northeast in New England. There is some sense of cooler, drier air into the Tennessee Valley. Wet weather for the Carolinas, the Gulf Coast. The hot weather continues to cap off the atmosphere across a good part of Texas. Meanwhile, again, lowering pressures here. If we get the hot ridge to move farther west, the African high moving into the Atlantic, this will be the channeling effect going forward with tropical systems across the southeastern United States. We'll have that 4-week forecast coming up later in the broadcast.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hypro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
Well, harvest is going to be here before we know it, and farmers across the country are looking up to the skies, wondering how the weather is going to impact them this year. Well, meteorologist Greg Soulier is here with me now with that fall outlook. And Greg, how are things shaping up in September?
Really, 2 words: early harvest. I think if you're ready to go this year, we actually debuted this outlook here over at feedstuffs365.com over the past week with Sarah Muirhead. Here we go. There's still summertime and maybe some record-setting warmth over the plains. Not great with dryness and drought, but we'll push that crop rapidly to maturity across much of the Corn Belt locales. Temps will tend to vary across the northern reaches of the country, drying out back west of the Missouri into California. And get used to this here on what's going to be, again, ramping up of the tropical basin in the Atlantic. A lot of wet weather up and down the eastern seaboard. For Ohio, though, maybe too late to matter. Welcome moisture expected there.
What do you see as the calendar turns to October, Greg?
A busier weather pattern, as you would expect. First, here's the summertime ridge, record-setting heat possible into the Corn Belt. Good moisture reduction, dry down values, evaporative losses, the warmth over the southeastern part of the country. Some cooling into western reaches. No Arctic air, really no early hard frost or freeze. If we do get that over the eastern part of the country, crops will be well advanced. Tropical rains here, more of it down through Texas, and some welcome moisture into areas of the Pacific Northwest. That's the first half of October. Second half, well, temps to kind of ease on down. We break down the ridge over the northern half of the country. Some cooling, frost and freeze as you expect into the Great Lakes region. Warmth over the southeastern sections. Busy weather pattern. We've got the hot ridge here, one off the African coast, so systems continue to work on up. We may get some meaningful rainfall into the eastern Corn Belt. Otherwise, it's wet weather for the eastern states.
How does it change as we get deeper into fall in November?
Again, you typically want to get harvest done, wrapped up by Thanksgiving on a bunch of different levels. Some cooling into the middle part of the country. country. No super cold air here, just a bit below average warmth in the southeast and over the western reaches of the country. Meanwhile, we get dry time under the ridge over the western reaches. Normal precip across much of the heartland, a little above average, but we should be well ahead of the game over the northeastern part of the country. And look at the tropical weather system still going on into November off the Atlantic.
What do you see, Greg, as December comes into focus?
Quick snapshot here, and we see a transition at some point getting early to mid-winter time into La Nina. So the warmth is here, but look at the compaction of temperatures and the drop-off in readings. And here comes the early in the month, probably, a shot of some cold Arctic air into the Canadian prairie. It is a La Nina winter weather pattern ahead. So here we go with an active and busy storm track. Get it done while you may with harvest in mind.
Well, thanks, Greg, as always, for that insight. It certainly seems like it's going to be a busy fall yet ahead for those growers across this country. And if your busy fall includes doing some work on classic tractors, well, you're going to want to stay tuned to Max's latest update to these Steiner Stories.
In Steiner Stories, as we visit with Dan Steiner, Steiner Tractor Parts, Lennon, Michigan. One thing I noticed pulling into a tractor show a few weeks ago, there were Steiner catalogs piled there. There were some ink pens, some things for folks attending the shows. You really get involved with so many shows across the country is one thing I've noticed.
Yeah, the community is very important to us, and we try to do everything we can to support it. We have a Tractor Club outreach program. Currently, we're serving over 400 clubs. We send them tchotchkes, for want of a better word. So there's everything from hats to pens, sometimes apparel, magnets, you name it.
People enjoy that connection with Steiner, it seems. If they've ordered your parts, they like to have that affiliation one way or another, whatever it might be.
Yeah, it's getting increasingly difficult to find parts for the older tractors. There's not as much salvage as there used to be, and the OEs are continuing to obsolete parts over time. So we essentially are filling a vacuum or a void in the market.
You have background in the salvage side of the business. You grew up in that, didn't you?
Yep, my father started doing salvage in the 60s. He also sold used tractors and short line equipment as well. He's still actively involved in that. He's 81 today, and he's still pulling parts off of old tractors, and we help him ship them out sometimes because some of the orders can be pretty big and cumbersome for him.
Does he share a little advice with his offspring now and then as maybe you're walking through the plant here?
My father is the idea guy. It was his idea that started this company, and he continues to have new ideas. I would say with every passing week, my father's calling me up with a hot idea.
You know, you make a good team probably from that standpoint. He brings along an idea and your passion brings it to fruition.
Yeah, we're really focused on building the new parts, and my father is constantly coming up with ideas and suggestions because he's getting calls from folks that cannot find parts that they need. And if he can't fill that void with used parts, or if he's about to run out, then that gives us an opportunity to step in and provide a needed service for our customers.
One thing I realized in our first visit, when I met you the first time, you know many of the shows that are held across this country. You've been to them. You know many of the key people involved out there because you've been there face to face with them. That kind of sets you apart from the crowd, I would imagine.
Yeah, we built this company from the ground up, and we used to go to swap meets, auctions, tractor shows all over the country. I went with my folks and myself, and we took a 48-foot semi-trailer and a fifth wheel camper, and we'd set up and we'd live at the show a week or two at a time.
Out there in the heat and the dust and the smoke.
Yeah, it wasn't always the most comfortable of conditions, but I was younger.
I understand that. Dan Steiner, good to talk with you here on our episode of Steiner Stories. We appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Max. Thanks a lot.
It's so great to see another person with that passion for keeping vintage machinery running. Always appreciate looking at those Steiner Stories. Folks, stay with us. When This Week in Agribusiness comes back, we'll talk weather with Greg Solier. We'll also have another conversation from Fent Lodge.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH. Built by farmers.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Farmers are always looking to push to that next frontier when it comes to production on the farm. One way many are looking to do that is with the addition of biologicals. Joining us now to discuss it is Dave Schrock, an Indiana farmer who's partnered with Mosaic on biologicals. And Dave, thanks for talking with us today.
Well, thanks, Mike. It's a pleasure being here.
Tell us a little bit about your operation.
So we farm in north central Indiana. Town is Bremen, Indiana. Farm with my family. My son is our operations manager, and my daughter's our CFO.
And I understand you're working with the Mosaic Frontier Fields program. Dave, can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yes, we are working with the Mosaic Bioscience Division, and it has been a great experience. They have brought several biological products to the ag sector that they have researched for a long time, and very solid agronomic biologicals, so we're excited to be a part of that program.
And I understand you've been able to put some of those to the test on your operation this year. Dave, what have you seen? What have you learned?
So I've been a long-time advocate of soil health on our farm, and we have seen nutrient uptake advantages. We have seen an uptick in certain micronutrients and phosphorus uptake early in the plant. So it's a bacillus product that is already in the soil, so it's just enhancing what is already in our soil. So we have seen some advantages.
Now, which crops are you using the biologicals on?
So we actually have it on corn and soybeans this year. We had it on corn only in 23, but this year we have some on corn and soybeans.
Now, Dave, I'm hearing a lot about biologicals from farmers as I travel the countryside. I imagine you are too. What are you hearing across the industry?
Yeah, it seems like biologicals is the buzzword of the year, the era, whatever. So I would caution growers to know their suppliers and know that those suppliers have data to back up their claims. There's a lot of claims made in the biological sector. There's good biology and there's biology that's probably not so good. So I would really encourage farmers to do their research.
Now, when you look at your fields and you're watching this crop year develop, what are you watching for examples of the product working?
Yeah, so plant health, greener plants, stronger plants. Then we do weekly tissue tests, just like they would do lab work on you and I. And we check our plants weekly and we watch for nutrient uptake.
All right. Now, working with Mosaic, how's that been from your perspective as a grower?
Well, Mosaic has been very good to work with. We would, as growers, probably think it's a big company and the personal thing is gone, but it's about people, and they have very good people, and it's just been a pleasure to work with Mosaic on this project.
Now, what would you say to farmers who are considering a biological, Dave?
Well, I would go back to what I just said a couple minutes ago, is to make sure that you understand what it is you're addressing on your farm, and then research the biology sector and find the product that is going to do what you want it to do, and that there's data to back up that they have been able to do what you want to do.
Dave, a lot of this information, of course, is available online. Where would you send viewers if they want to learn more about Frontier Fields?
So Mosaic has a site that you can go to called True Response, and you will see plots across the country. Our plots are in there, and you can compare soil types and environments and see if it might be a fit for you.
Dave Schrock, Bremen, Indiana, thanks for talking with us this week.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Greg Sodier is back now with his extended farm weather forecast for the nation.
Earlier in the program, Greg, you mentioned there's rain chances next week. Who's going to see the bulk of it?
Really over the same parts of the country. Saw it last week here across the upper Midwest, back into the western Corn Belt locales. This is primarily late in the week, and one or two spots where we're able to weaken that hot cap, that atmosphere that is loaded up with heat, maybe a couple of scattered storms, southern plains, wet weather over the southeastern part of the country. The tropics are going to get active again, and some bulk of moisture and pretty good coverages later into the week across the Pacific Northwest.
The week of August 26th, it's the Farm Progress Show in Boone, Iowa. Greg, how are temperatures shaping up?
We thought maybe that hot ridge would be in a position, but there's some fragmenting, a little piece here, another one here, so daytime ratings probably into the 80s at Boone, Iowa. Some comfortable overnight lows. Boy, remember recent years, it has just been absolutely horrid with temps and humidity in mind. Warmth here and over the northwestern part of the country, some cool air still lingering over the northern and eastern Corn Belt locales. Nothing to worry about the cool air. There are a lot of growing degree day units and summertime left on the maps and charts. Look at this fetch of moisture over the eastern part of the country, stalled front, and the first in a myriad of tropical systems coming in off the southwest Atlantic.
What are you watching for that first full week in September, Greg?
The heat is back into play. It's early September, meteorological autumn, but feeling like maybe the 4th of July in some areas of the plains again, western Corn Belt. This will certainly push things to maturity, but ongoing dryness and drought too over the southeastern part of the country. Normal temperatures, the last of the cool air into the northeast New England, and readings about normal into the Pacific Northwest. Still an active storm track, but well to the north. So look at the expanse of dry time here under the hot ridge back to the west. Tropical moisture off the Pacific, tropical moisture off the Gulf and the Atlantic, and things are going to get ramped up even more. Should be a very busy month of September and October and probably November in the tropical basin of the Atlantic.
Well, taking a look at the week of September 9th, it's the Husker Harvest Day show in Grand Island. Greg, is it going to be hot?
Going to be hot, probably still pushing. Here we are mid-September, up maybe around the 90-degree mark into the eastern Corn Belt locales as well. Temps normal here, hot in the southwest, some cooling into the Pacific Northwest. And I tell you, if we get that hot ridge to position itself here off the African coast, way over here, we'll get a channeling effect of systems that will come up through the southeastern states and up the eastern seaboard. So problems lurking with too much rainfall and a tropical feature here, one coming across the southwestern reaches of Atlantic, but at least across the heartland, things are dry for outdoor work and early harvest.
Our Farm Progress Roundup is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of heavy-duty grain carts and make the most of your harvest season. Visit brandt.ca for more. This week, we're digging into the economics of the machinery market. Andy Castillo serves as the technology and equipment editor here at Farm Progress, and next week, he'll give us a deep dive at farmprogress.com. But he joins us now, and Andy, thanks for talking with us.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for having me on. You know, the layoffs have been a really big news item this year for good reason. I mean, they're concerning. But I spoke with an economics professor at Iowa State University who covers agriculture named Chad Hart, and he gave me some really good perspective on it. Basically, he said that the farm machinery market is really intrinsically linked with the farm income that comes in. So we're in a lull right now, and he said that this is cyclical, so it's going down. But there's a little bit more than that that's going on. Farm machinery is becoming more technological forward than ever. So maybe, he said, machinery brands are using this lull to restructure their approach, and that's resulted in maybe a few layoffs.
Interesting. I've heard that from a couple of other folks. This focus on technology is changing the work requirements in the facilities. Now, Andy, are we seeing sales start to improve versus last year for farm machinery?
The prices are definitely going down. So, if you're in the market for it, I would certainly start looking at used machines. Auction values are really declining right now. And that's a trend that, experts are expecting will continue throughout the year. But this current economic lull, I think we're probably in it for another year or two, probably. So it's a long haul.
It is indeed a long haul, but there are always some bright spots in every year. Andy, Farm Progress Show is coming up. You'll be on hand in Boone, Iowa. What products are you most excited to see in person?
Mike, I think I'm just excited to discover what I don't know will be there. It's always fun to just, find out what's new. So I think, I can't pinpoint one specific product, but ask me after the show and I'll certainly tell you.
Of course, you'll be one of those editors reporting on the new products that were on display at the Farm Progress Show. We will be tuning in after the Boone example this year to see what all you have uncovered. Andy Castillo, equipment and technology editor here at Farm Progress. Thanks for talking with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Have you downloaded the app to the 2024 Farm Progress Show? It'll make it easy to find what you want to see and to guide you to those locations. Farm Progress Show 2024 app. Or you can also go to the website, farmprogressshow.com. Be sure and order your tickets in advance. It'll hasten your entry into the show.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor.
At Max's Tractor Shed this weekend, it isn't just about the tractor. We'll also talk about the implement behind it and its ability to handle corn stalks. Max's Tractor Shed are brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants are made to make it last. Well, at so many of the shows and festivals where we see the tractors, it is nice to see attached to it an implement. First, though, about the tractor. This is a Farmo 300, made in 1955. International made that model for a period of 3 years, from 54 to 56. Mike Silberhorn told me that he's had this tractor for about 15 years. It's a nice tractor to be sure, but now look behind it. That is a Model 60 International Harvester plow. Mike said this one is especially good because it allows the clearance of the crop residue over those two bottoms of the plow. So when he goes out for a plow day out there in a farm field somewhere, he doesn't have to worry so much about it plugging up. Mike Silberhorn, who made a living for 12 years in corporate International Harvester, said the company made some very good tillage tools coming out of its plant at Canton, Illinois. Of course he would say that. The company man backed his product, to be sure. And Mike then went on to continue working with the International Harvester line, the Cub Cadet tractors as they came in under the MTD umbrella. But he loves not only his old IH tractor, but his IH plow. And he'll be out somewhere demonstrating it, I'm sure, this summer. Now, let's find out what's happening at Big Iron Auctions. Here's Mark Stock.
Well, hello, Max. The Big Iron and Sullivan Auctioneers auction calendar is full, and we start on Tuesday, August the 20th, with the Dealer and Farmers Machinery Auction in Hamilton, Illinois. First items will close at 8:30 in the morning Central Time. And then at 10 o'clock, Compton's Mowing Service, Inc. retirement sale in Star City, Indiana, will begin to close. Selling 3 2022 John Deere 6110M mechanical front tractors, plus commercial-grade lawnmowers. On Wednesday, August the 21st, very large sale featuring equipment from Agrivision Equipment Group, LLC, selling John Deere self-propelled forage harvesters. Jamie Rudloff is retiring from Spalding, Nebraska. Midway Farm Equipment from Mountain Lake, Minnesota will sell 84 items. Mike Foltz from Humphrey, Nebraska will sell a 2020 Case IH Steiger 540 quad track track tractor, and Parallel Ag will sell 44 items. And on Thursday, August the 22nd, Cake and Cow Farms from Hugoton, Kansas will sell a John Deere DB90 36-row 30-inch planter. And the following week, Max, we have a huge construction auction lined up for August the 28th. Plus, we'll be at Farm Progress, and Van Wall Equipment will be having their 2-day sale on August the 28th and 29th. We are looking forward to seeing everyone in Boone, Iowa at the Farm Progress Show.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. This week, we're getting to know Trenton Payne. He's serving as the Illinois State FFA President for this next year. And Trenton, thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Sure thing. It's my pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about growing up in Illinois in Richland County. Did you grow up on a farm?
Me personally, no, I did not. So I had a more non-traditional agricultural background coming into FFA. The only connection to agriculture I really had was through my grandpa's farm, and he lives about an hour and a half south of me. So I didn't even get to spend too much time on the farm and learn about the agricultural industry until my high school years. And then FFA really has given me a foot in the door into the agricultural industry.
Thinking back on your high school career in FFA, what were some of the highlights, Trenton?
Yeah, the one that's coming to mind is this past year, in 2023, the national convention. My teammates and I competed in the National Agronomy CDE, and months leading up to the competition, we studied an incredible amount, and we ended up actually winning the contest. So that was probably the highlight of my career in FFA, just being on stage at the national level and seeing all of our hard work paying off.
Absolutely. Trenton, so now you'll be serving as president of the FFA in Illinois. What are you excited about this year?
Oh, there's so much to be excited about. The one thing that's coming to mind right now is chapter visits. Coming up in about mid-September, we'll go and travel around the state for about 6 weeks, traveling to all the different chapters in the state. So that's something that's impacted me heavily as a student, and I really want to give back to those students.
Lots to see as this year gets started. Trenton Payne, we wish you the best as Illinois' FFA state president.
Thank you.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by PTX, a new brand from AGCO that includes precision ag technologies from Precision Planting and PTX Trimble. Chad Colby's back this week with another look at security systems.
On our tech segment here in the past, we've showed you a solar-based cellular security camera. But recently I purchased a wired camera that'll use your local Wi-Fi network. On the front of the garage, I had basically just a normal LED light that had motion detection, and the light would come on. And I wanted something better than that with a camera. Rather than leave the light on all the time, I wanted the benefit of having a camera for security, but I also didn't want to give up that bright light. And Ring's new Pro Light, it's really bright. So I was trying to think of a great way that I could show this to you, so I waited till it was good and dark outside. And you can see here I've got the app open so you can see it in real time. And right away you're going to notice how bright the light is. And that's what I was really impressed with. Now, the camera has on it night vision, and it's going to stream back that to you in 1080p HDR. So very, very good on your phone. You can see in great clarity. But I wanted to show some of the added, I guess, crazy features of this new camera system. And certainly, as you see here, I'm just giving you a little taste of it, but there's all kinds of great options. It pairs with other devices you might have, other cameras around your house on the same network. It's got sound detection, so it can hear things like a dog barking or glass breaking. It also has 3D motion, which is really slick. It can track objects as they move around the cameras and alert you there as well. But the thing that I guess I was probably really impressed with is when you tied them all together, it really added another level of security. And I keep thinking on your farm or ranch how important that is today. So I wanted to give you a little example of what that sounds like. I'm pretty sure my neighbors appreciated that 110 decibel alarm that just went off at almost 10 o'clock at night. But listen, this works really good. And when you tie it together with maybe your Ring camera at the doorbell, obviously with the added benefits of turning the lights on and off, there's just a lot of great functionality with this system that really ties together in their ecosystem. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
When we come back, we'll have another conversation from the Fent Lodge. Before we sign off for the week, let's go up to Jackson, Minnesota for another installment in our Fent Lodge Conversations. John, let's talk about Farmer Core. Can you explain to me what it is and why it matters to farmers?
Absolutely. So Farmer Core is AGCO's strategic commitment, strategic program to revolutionizing the farmer experience, to delivering value to the farmers through the distribution network globally in a different way at scale than we've ever done before. It's built on 3 pillars: smart network coverage, mobile and on-farm solutions, and digital customer-facing solutions. Smart network coverage is about moving away from a one-size-fits-all dealer outlet type to right-sizing and providing the best experience depending on the industry type and the coverage for that particular customer. Mobile and on-farm solutions is all about getting as much of the experience on the service, the support side, and even on the sales side out onto the farm. So more windshields, more machines, more service trucks that can do the work and take that experience directly to the farmer. And lastly, the digital customer-facing solutions. This is all about empowering the farmer to do business the way they want to, whether it's booking a service, whether it's contacting a salesperson about machines that might be available, or it's about getting the most out of their machine from performance optimization, from support, from service, putting that all in the palm of their hand so they can dictate how they want that experience and they have the tools necessary to do it how they want to do it.
Ben, some farmers here in America are still just getting to know the Fent brand. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing to build that trust level with these growers across the country?
When you think about the Fent brand, it came over in North America about 26 years ago. And I'd say the foundation of when we came over in North America was our Gold Star program, which is all about proximity when we think about the customer getting the solution to the customer. So our 3-year Gold Star warranty comes with 3 years of warranty, 3 years of your scheduled maintenance, also comes with an uptime guarantee, so a loaner machine if you need it, and also making sure we have our best-in-class parts availability.
John, how do dealers get involved in FarmerCore? Is there a certification of some kind?
We're really focused on understanding, particular metrics in the market, right? How much of that service work is being done on a farm? How much, what does our mobile fleet look like today? And how do we continue to grow that and make sure we have, based on the data-driven insights, how much service demand, how many customers, how many farms are there in certain areas? That all equates to how much service capacity is required. And then do we have the right fleet and the right number of bays in a good, close 30, 45-minute proximity to all the farmers in that area? So we're looking at certain specific metrics, and then we're targeting those focus areas, working with our dealer, our network of dealers to make sure we're getting the right infrastructure there. So while there's no certification program today formally, we are looking at those metrics and working to address any gaps we have. And then over time, we'll see if that becomes something more formal than it is right now. But it's all about metrics and closing gaps to those target areas we want to get to.
John Rahia, Ben Matthews, thank you so much for filling me in this week.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Before we go for the week, I want to give a big thank you to all the friends of This Week in Agribusiness. I met last week in Central Michigan, and a big congratulations to the O'Connells, who are celebrating 70 years of marriage. Thanks so much for joining us today. Be sure to tune in next time, right here for This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.